Thank you. Thank you very much. Boy, you know, I've had a couple of great opportunities to give a talk to raise awareness and raise funds for Bright Stars of Bethlehem in Colorado and down in the Bay Area. And in both of those events, I was inspired by the people of Bright Stars of Bethlehem, and I just thought, there's just one thing missing. The co-founder of the cultural center and university we're supporting, Dr. Raheb. And I heard Dr. Mitri Raheb is coming to Seattle, and I was invited to a dinner tomorrow night to share with him and some friends of ours who have been busy on this Palestine issue for a long time. And I thought, that's great. And then I thought, we've got to take this opportunity when Dr. Raheb is in town to have a little bit bigger audience. And I don't even know if we asked Dr. Raheb if he wouldn't mind working the night before that dinner, but he's here. He just flew in today from California, and I'm so thankful that our church is eager to open the doors to raising awareness about struggles on this planet, difficult issues, complicated issues, because we're stakeholders in this, and we're part of it. And if you believe in God, you believe that we're all children of God. That makes us all brothers and sisters. Doesn't matter if you're across the street or across the sea, you're still siblings. And we've got some beautiful brothers and sisters in Palestine that we're going to learn about tonight and gain a little empathy. So I'd like to thank our tech crew who's going to be standing by tonight. Thank Pastor Jenna and our staff here at Trinity Lutheran Church, where I'm thankful to go to church. And right now, I want to just kind of set the table for what we're about to experience. You know, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't gone to Palestine myself. I really believe if everybody traveled before they could vote, this world would be a much more peaceful, stable, and loving place, because you'd humanize the planet. And what I really like is traveling in places where you're not supposed to travel. Cuba, Iran, Palestine, you know? And finding out that that's the richest travel experience. We get to know people that we're not supposed to understand. And we realize how much we have in common. So, you know, when people say have a safe trip, I think what they might also be saying is don't mess up your ethnocentricity. Don't make friends with people who are supposed to be your enemies, because it's going to complicate your life when you come home. Thomas Jefferson knew about this a long time ago. Thomas Jefferson said, travel makes a person wiser, if less happy. It's thought-provoking. Muhammad was no fool. He wanted people to travel. Every time in your life, you got to go all the way to Mecca. Why? Well, he said, don't tell me how educated you are. Tell me how much you've traveled. I really believe that travel is a vital force for peace and justice. And if you know the realities on this planet, there is no peace without justice. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit tonight, hope and justice and peace. So I'm thankful that I stumbled onto Dar al-Kalima. I've just learned how to say that word. I just really was thankful for Bright Stars of Bethlehem. I can remember that. Bright Stars of Bethlehem is the organization in the United States that lets those of us who care about Palestine give our money in a very trustworthy and reliable and straightforward and above-the-table way that will go directly to Palestine. Because you can fall in love with a mission far away and you get nervous about how can my money really get there. Thank goodness for Bright Stars of Bethlehem. It's easier to pronounce, and we know it is connected intimately with where that money is going to go, Dar al-Kalima in Bethlehem, you see. So I'm thankful. I was just talking with Dr. Mitri a few minutes ago. We had dinner 10, 15 years ago, and he didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who he was, but we both cared, and we didn't know we'd have this journey ahead of us, and I'm just so thankful you're here, Dr. Mitri. So the itinerary for tonight is I'm going to do what we say in TV, provide a wide shot, an establishing shot. It really bugs me when we're making a TV show if you go right into the close-ups before looking at the wide shot, okay? So I'm just going to talk for 20 minutes or so about the Holy Land with a slideshow. And then Dr. Mitri is going to take, along with Chris from his office here in Bright Stars of Bethlehem, take about 30 minutes to get you more intimately up to date on what's going on in Bethlehem. And then we'll have 15 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll have the sort of equivalent of offering and see if you want to help out. And then we're going to have social time in the narthex, and we happen to have a very appropriate baklava. Okay, so if you don't know baklava, you're gonna know baklava at the end of the evening with some mint tea. So thank you so much for being here. And now I think I'll just ask you to go with me to Palestine. I'm of great believer in traveling and seeing things firsthand, but if you can see it, you know, a little bit indirectly, it helps also. So we're going to have a virtual trip right now around Palestine, and I'll just give you a little context first of all. When we say the Holy Land, we're talking about the area between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. And it's complicated because there's this very holy place where on Temple Mount, right there in Jerusalem, and it happens to be one of the most holy places for Jews, Muslims, and Christians on the same piece of real estate. Boy, God had a wicked sense of humor to put that same holy space on the same little plot of real estate. And today there's 12 million people in the Holy Land, and I would say in very rough terms, 12 million people, half of them are Jewish, or half of them are Israeli, and half of them are Arab. In the West Bank, that's the big green area, that would be 4 million people, and you could say the vast majority being Arab Muslims. And in Israel, which is most of that territory, there's 8 million people. 6 million of them are Israeli Jews, and 2 million of them are Arab Muslims. So it's a complicated mix. About half the people, 6 million, would be Israeli, or Jewish, I mean, and half of them are Palestinian. And when I was there making my TV show, I was really good with all the terminology. You have to be very careful because it's complicated. But the point is, it's about 50-50. And when you go there, there's nothing like going there to sort through it and to learn about what life is like in the Holy Land. By the way, going back to here, you see the Jordan River. The West Bank is the west side of the Jordan River. And then the country of Jordan is on the East Bank. So that's the connection there. But we were there filming, and I made this TV show. It was such a cool experience. And I brought some leftover DVDs, and just they're free if you want them, as long as they last, out on the table there. But if you still have a DVD player, you're welcome to grab one of those. Otherwise, you can watch the show anytime on my website. Just go to Rick Steves and you look in the TV section and watch the 1 hour we did to try to sort this through. Most complicated script I think I've ever had to write. But boy, did we learn a lot. And there's that piece of real estate. And that's where the great temple was. That was the center of the Jewish faith. And it was destroyed by the Romans in, 70 AD. And you had the great diaspora. And also on there is a very holy spot for Muslims, and right here is the very holy spot also for Christians. I mean, Jesus was crucified a few blocks away, and a 20-minute bike ride from there is Bethlehem, where we believe he was born. So it's a complicated, many layered kind of historical and demographic baklava, you could say. Most of the tourists that go to the Holy Land from the United States are on Christian, sightseeing tours, and you want to go where Jesus walked, as long as it's in Israel, not the West Bank, because it's just nerve-wracking for a lot of people to go to West Bank with the perspective they pick up here in the United States. The only time I saw a traffic jam of tourists was up in Galilee, and you could imagine every Christian sightseeing tour bus was right there, lining up to go to the various sites that we all know from our Bible stories. And I loved going there. It was really powerful, really great. And it's a lot of tourism that goes to the Holy Land. And most of the tours, they make a beeline into Bethlehem, which happens to be in the West Bank. But they have to go across the wall. They have to go into, Palestine, probably with people that don't even want to say the word Palestine. And then they have to go to Nativity Square or whatever and see the Church of the Nativity. And you have all of the pilgrims and all of the tourists lining up here to kneel down and kiss the rock where it's believed was the manger. Many people debate where it actually was, but this is the church that sat there for a long time. And it's quite a beautiful experience as a traveler to go there, and as a Christian to go where we believe Jesus was born. The complicated thing is, where Jesus was born and where he was crucified is just like a 20-minute bike ride apart. And the people who live in Bethlehem can't go over that wall, and the people that live in Jerusalem can't go to Bethlehem. We tourists can walk across the wall, no problem. I walked across it 6 times in order to get my little on-camera correct. and the guard didn't even care, you know. But if you live there, it's more complicated. When I travel, I always like to have a guided tour. So I have my Palestinian guide and I have my Israeli guide. And I really believe you need to talk to, whenever there's a wall, if you want to understand that wall, you need to understand what's on both sides of it. And you need to talk to people who live on both sides of it. So, and wonderful guides, wonderful story, worth knowing. There's plenty of reason to talk and share. And this is Abi, and this is Kamal, my Jewish guide and my Palestinian Christian guide. Kamal, on the far left, is a Christian Palestinian. A lot of tourists, when they meet a Christian in Palestine, they ask, well, how long has your family been Christian? And the people say, 2,000 years. I mean, it's just one of those examples of things we don't quite get unless we go there and talk to people. But Kamal's family's been a Christian in Palestine since biblical times, you know. And it was just, and as a matter of fact, there's such a concern for the well-being of the Christian community that there's actually a law that says the mayor of Bethlehem will always be a Christian. Even if there's just one Christian left in Bethlehem, he will be the mayor, or she will be the mayor. So it's an interesting attempt to keep different voices being heard in the complicated Holy Land. Now, when I was traveling around, I strove to talk to people and understand what's the vibe, how are people feeling? And it was very interesting for me to talk to kids. I like to talk to kids. I'd go to kids in an Israeli settlement. You know, we'll see them in a minute, but these are those gated communities on hilltops that are being built in Palestine. And these kids are like pioneer family kids, you know, and rough and tumble, happy kids, full of vigor. And I actually saw little kids running around with little plastic guns, shooting imaginary Palestinian, you know, terrorists. And then I'd go into poor communities in Palestine, and I'd see little kids running around with imaginary guns, shooting Jewish bad guys. And I thought, this is terrible. And then I thought, what was I doing when I was that age? I had my gun. That was my most important Christmas present. And who was I shooting? My parents' enemies. You know, that's who I was shooting. It was just very interesting how I was saddled with my parents' baggage from that little tiny age, and these kids are saddled with their parents' baggage from that little tiny age. And to me, the unintended consequence of a wall, when you separate two communities, wherever that wall may be, is the younger generation can't talk to each other, so the only outlook they get is their parents' outlook, and it perpetuates the discord. And it's a tragic thing when the young people can't talk to each other. And that's a beautiful thing that's being done at al-Kalima, is young people from different communities are able to talk with each other. Every side has a story. Of course, from the romantic, thrilling Israeli side, which, you know, I'm all for Israeli security. I am pro-Israel. And I just believe the best thing to be pro-Israel is to have dignity for Palestine. That would be the way to make Israel safer would be to help Palestine have dignity and actual independence. But there's a story, it's kind of a belief in Israel that this land, it was a land without a people, for a people without a land. And after the Holocaust, everybody wanted to help out, of course, after that tragedy. It was a perfect solution. Establish modern Israel right there. The reality is there were people there. And those people were the Palestinians, who have been there for eons. And that's kind of, in a way, the root of the problem we're struggling through. If you look at the map, at what's happened in our lifetimes, this is Israel that I showed you earlier. Before there was Israel, it was all Muslim Arab control, I guess you could call it. And then with each war and with each treaty and with each, you know, and whatever's going on, less and less is green, until it gets to where it is now, which is just little islands of green. And there's 4 million people. And it's a very difficult situation. I don't want to minimize the difficulties of the Israeli community and so on. It's just, there's a reality here that cannot be ignored. And it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller where the Palestinian people can actually call home. When we look at the West Bank, we realize on a simple map it says, this is the West Bank, this is where 4 million Palestinians live. But no, if you look more carefully at the West Bank, there are 3 different kind of zones. And I don't remember all the fine details, but basically, 90% of the population lives in what we would call here reservations. urban reservations. The urban centers are surrounded. They are autonomous, controlled by Palestinians. But everything that connects them is not controlled by the Palestinians. It's controlled by Israel. And in Israel's point of view and in their defense, if there's something terrible coming out of Palestine, all they got to do is shut down all of that area in between the reservations, and you've bottled up the whole situation. So that might be good for their defense, but it's not good for Palestinian autonomy. This is the reality that Palestinians have to live with today. Small, isolated areas that they are autonomous, but no connectedness. I am a sucker for I'm not a sucker, I'm a romantic fan of Israeli independence. And I was there on Israeli National Independence Day, and it was exciting. And it's quite a story, and you get caught up in it. And every park smells like barbecues because there's all that family happiness going on, like we would have on the 4th of July. But then you realize, oh, 2 blocks away there's this wall. And on the other side of that wall, there's another national day. And it's not the National Triumph Day, it's called the Day of Catastrophe. Because, of course, the day that Israel won its independence, Palestinians lost their autonomy. And it's a complicated reality. I really think it's important, if you want to understand the Holy Land, to have a guide to take you around and share the Israeli perspective. And I can understand how the Israelis want the high ground after what they've been through. And you can see the high ground, which is now controlled by Israel. I can also understand how Palestinians are really threatened and hurt and as concerned about as Israelis are about their physical safety when it comes to terrorism or something like that, settlements. There's 500,000 Israeli Jews living in the West Bank in fortified settlements on hilltops with I-5 quality freeways connecting them with Israel, you see. And to go there and to see these modern gated communities surrounded by traditional, humble Palestinian villages and towns, it's quite a poignant experience. And then to go into these settlements and talk to people, find out, why are you living here? Well, there's lots of reasons. A lot of the people I talk to are living there, it's like planting your sword. This is ours, historically, and in our holy book it says this is ours, and it's their religious patriotic duty to raise their kids there. Other people go there because there's government subsidies that help them go there, and other people want to go there because it's getting away from it all. It's like living in Meadow Valley here or something, you see, and it's just a nice place to raise your kids. These guys just bought a condo, and I was talking to them, and they told me what I just told you guys earlier. The Arab people they should be in Jordan, on the other side of the Jordan River, not on the west bank of the Jordan River. If they don't like Israeli control of this, they should go to the east bank of the Jordan River. Well, Palestinians don't see it that way, but that's the simple Israeli solution when you talk to young guys like that. If you look at an Israeli house, it'll be very strong, and it'll have a safe room from snipers, so the family can be safe if there's trouble in the air. And if you look at a Palestinian apartment, it's got a tangle of water towers on the roof painted black, so it absorbs heat, the same way my mom and dad on our boat had a black big plastic bag to heat the water when we wanted to take a shower on the boat, you know. You have black water canisters on your apartment top because one way one way of many, Israel can control the Palestinian population in the West Bank is controlling water. The wall is pretty much gerrymandered so that it controls the water, and you can see water areas that are just fortified, even in the West Bank, controlled by Israel. And if there's trouble, and you're Palestinian, you'll be glad if you got some water stored on the rooftop, you see. You go to Bethlehem, and we think about, oh, little town of Bethlehem, but Bethlehem is a tangle of amazing culture. You've got minarets with crescents, and you've got spires with crosses. We all go to the Church of the Nativity to see where Jesus was born, but I highly recommend spending time there and walking around and feeling the commerce, feeling what's going on. There's a monument on the main square here. It's just a humble monument, remembering all of the young men who are, and women, who are doing a hard time in Israel right now for political activities, you know. It's on everybody's mind, who's in jail, and what's the last, problem as they squabble over this land. I love this photograph because it talks about the land. It shows the land, the love of the land. And if you go to Palestine, you recognize, anywhere I go in the world, it's just people need land. It's just dignity. And if you can't have free, honest, solid control of your land, you don't have hope, you don't have dignity, you don't have a reason to go by the rules almost, you know? And when you look at the West Bank today, no access to any waterfront, no access to the Dead Sea, no access to the Mediterranean, no control of the borders, no airport. How can you run an economy with no control of your borders and no airports? How can you even have a convention for your business people, you see? So there's this kind of structural poverty that demoralizes or disillusions a society that needs more hope. And when you go to these beautiful towns and you feel the energy and you feel the heritage, in Hebron, there's a very important tomb of Abraham, which is from 2000 BC. And it happens to be under a medieval roof, and half of the room is a mosque for the Muslims, and half of the room is a synagogue for the Jews. And there's bulletproof glass halfway down their common patriarch's tomb so people can worship on both sides. It's a heartbreaking situation because Jews have attacked Muslims and Muslims have attacked Jews right there in the shadow of their patriarch's tomb. So there's some sorting out to do. And as a traveler, to go there and to see it, and to see the frustration of an old Palestinian woman that has to be living with gates and turnstiles and young soldiers that tell them you can't go here and you can't go there. That's a hard, hard reality. And we can turn the corner on that difficulty if we can invest in a society with healthy alternatives to political anger and hope and reason to be educated, reason to go by the rules, reason to be working with different dimensions of your society. That's the spirit of Dar al-Kalima. That's what inspired me when I was in Bethlehem. To go to Dar al-Kalima, to see on the basketball court, to see on the theater stage, to see in the library, children from different communities together, having something to do other than to be angry and getting in trouble near the wall, you know. When people told me, and I told people told me they thought that the Palestinian people were raising their kids to hate Israelis. I asked the Palestinians about this. They said, no, we're doing everything we can to raise our kids not to hate the Israelis, but given their reality, it's a challenge, considering their frustrating reality. The opposite of frustration is hope. Bright Stars of Bethlehem, a theme of Bright Stars of Bethlehem's work is to give this community hope. To me, that's a powerful thing. When I was in Palestine, one of my favorite souvenirs was just seeing the Palestinian flag blow freely in the wind and to hear Palestinians say, welcome to Palestine. Well, everybody wanted to say just welcome to Palestine. When I write an editorial, the Los Angeles Times will not run the editorial if it has the word Palestine in it. It's just part of their writing standards. There's certain words you don't use, and I didn't realize Palestine was one of them. But try to write a good editorial where every other newspaper's writing it, and in LA they won't run it because it says the word Palestine. You can call it the occupied territories or the West Bank, but you can't call it Palestine. My Israel-Palestine TV show aired in every city in the United States except for New York. I asked the programmer, is my show ever going to see the light of day in New York? And he goes, do you want me to be honest with you? No, I can't run it, you know. So we are recipients of that media here. Our worldview is shaped by the media. And it's not anything other than pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, and pro-peace to want to understand what is the reality over there and how can we sort it out. That's why we take the initiative, because we can celebrate a secure Israel. And at the same time, we can celebrate a free Palestine with dignity. There's a word called samud. I think the word is, and it means perseverance. Perseverance. And if you said one word that fits with Palestine, it's samud. Perseverance, steadfastness. And when we travel in Palestine, we'll meet people like these young women. They are persevering in front of all of this frustration. We'll meet people like Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb, who are dedicating their lives against pretty substantial odds to build a community that is empowered by hope rather than anger. And when I think of Reverend Mitri, I think of a Palestinian Christian, and it mixes two things: perseverance and love. Perseverance and love. And that's what we're empowering tonight. I'm just so thankful you're here. And I could talk all night, but I think I'm even over. So I'm going to just run a little 2-minute video, and then we're going to meet Reverend Mitri, okay? So let's get a little look at this Dar al-Kalima.
I care deeply about this place. This is my home. With the partnership with Bright Stars of Bethlehem, we can make this place a home for thousands of young Palestinians. Half of the Palestinian people are youth. We want to reach them. They are the potential of Palestine, and they are our future. Our mission is to educate the next generation of creative leaders for Palestine. Through this education, we give our students the tool not only to survive, but to thrive in life and in society.
Dar al-Kalima is a place to be more free. That's where I think it's the most important thing to have in your education, how to think freely. They teach you how to prove that you can. Give us more opportunity to know the world better and to decide which way we want to go.
This university is a direct answer to the shortage of institutions of higher education with a focus on arts and culture in Palestine.
The uniqueness of Dar al-Kalima University College is that its mandate is to provide programs in visual and performing arts, cultural heritage and tourism studies and design. We are working on creativity, we are working on art, we are working on the insight, the human spirit. And we believe that they are our ambassadors.
We envision that our alumni will be the future creative leaders in Palestine. They will be the peacemakers, and they will be the agents of social change.
Dar al-Kalima was a turning point for me as a person, because after 12 years of one system of education at school where you just receive information, it was this time for me to express myself, to experience other subjects. Teachers at Dar al-Kalima let you think for yourself, have your own opinions, your own thoughts, your own ideas.
This place matters. It matters to me, it matters to our students, it matters to our community. Dar al-Kalima is work in progress. Your support to Bright Stars of Bethlehem matters.
Good evening. I'm Pastor John Voswig, delighted, privileged even to introduce to you on this evening the Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb. I have an occasion to work with Mitri on many occasions and delightful meetings over the years, including orchestrating events such as this in the state of Washington, but also on the ground in Palestine on 4 different occasions, working with Mitri and the great folks of Bright Stars of Bethlehem. Now, if I read you the varying accomplishments of Mitri in his life, we would miss his speech. So I have done significant editing on this night. I want you to know ahead of time. And amidst what I read to you, there is so much more to tell. But even this is astounding. Born and raised in Palestine, Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb is a co-founder of Bright Stars of Bethlehem. He currently serves as the president of Dar al-Kalima, University of Arts and Culture. Previously, he was the pastor of Evangelical Lutheran Christmas Church in Bethlehem and the president and founder of Dayar Consortium, a Lutheran-based organization serving the Palestinian community. Described as the most widely published Palestinian theologian, Reverend Raheb is the author and editor of more than 40 books. His publications have been translated into 11 different languages. Reverend Raheb has received numerous awards internationally for his tireless fight for peace, justice, and equality. In 2012, he was awarded the German Media Prize, which honors public figures who have made a mark on society across political and ideological lines. Previous honorees include Nelson Mandela and the Dalai Lama. Reverend Raheb received the 2015 Olaf Palme Prize along with Israeli journalist Gideon Levi for their, quote, courageous and indefatigable fight against occupation and violence, and for a future Middle East characterized by peaceful coexistence and equality for all. In 2017, he was a recipient of a Ring of Tolerance from the European Academy of Arts and Sciences. The ring is awarded annually to 3 people, one from each Abrahamic faith, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Reverend Raheb lives in Bethlehem with his wife, Najwa Curry. They have 2 adult daughters, Dana and Tala. And let me say on a personal note, for those here tonight that are involved in the Christian tradition, many of you are aware of the text from Romans chapter 8, where the Apostle Paul writes about hope. Now, hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. I know of no other acquaintance in my life that has had the enduring hope and patience therein of a hope not yet seen, as the apostle describes it. And surely the people of Palestine have experienced the plight which they have and the occupation which is known, and how to maintain hope, the enduring hope. Perhaps it is that hope, as described by Bright Stars, deferred. At the same time, I want to say tonight, as significant as that unseen hope is, and surely keeps Mitri doing what he's doing along with his cohorts at Bright Stars, I don't seek to quibble with the Apostle Paul for his all-important word. But I will indicate tonight the importance, intermittently, now and then, of a seen hope. Of a seen hope infleshed, of a seen hope realized, of a seen hope visible. In my experience of Reverend Dr. Raheb, I suggest to you, along with his cohorts at Bright Stars of Bethlehem, that there is a hope made visible. Would you please help me in welcoming Reverend Dr. Raheb?
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, John. Thank you, Pastor Jeannie and Bishop Sheely, for being here tonight, for all your support. It's great to be back here in the Seattle area and to see many friends among you. Yeah, I mean, after hearing actually Rick talking, I decided a bit to change my topic. So I will start with a story. During the Second Intifada, that is the second uprising, which started in the year 2000, and maybe you remember there was in 2002, they called it here the standoff at the Church of the Nativity. It was on an early morning, around 5 a.m., that the Israeli tanks invaded the little town of Bethlehem. And actually, tanks were stationed just outside our Christmas Lutheran church and the parsonage where we live. And they were firing, they destroyed the gate to our center, they blew up the entrance to our house. They were really a very scary moment in our life. And we weren't sure actually that we will make it alive. And I remember actually we were under curfew for 40 days. For 40 days, we could not go and leave the house. Only after 14 days, they allowed us to go for like 3 hours to buy some groceries and then to come back. And the first person to come and visit us, to be allowed to enter into that whole area, which was under curfew, was the CNN reporter called Ben Wiedemann. You see him, he's still alive, still reporting. And his question to me was, Mitri, and I knew him for a long time, and his wife is a good friend. He said, Mitri, I mean, when you see that what you have worked on for so long is falling apart, when you see all the hopes for peace were scattered and shattered, don't you get angry? And my answer was, even as Christians, we get angry, right? At least I get angry. And I told him, but you know what? Every time we get angry, we start a new project. So then he looked at me and said, okay, now I understand why you have all of these projects. You must be a very angry man, right? But it is really, this is a highly theological question. There was a time in our history when we knew we are going through Friday, but we were always knowing that Sunday is coming. Right? So when you know Sunday is coming, it's easy to hold on. But the problem in Palestine is that we feel our Saturday is just too long. It's not 3 days, and it's not 3 years, and it's not 50 years, and it's not 70 years. It's more than that. And so people keep saying, how long, O Lord? And I think, what really make our life difficult is we see that the media is against us. You don't hear our narrative. You don't hear our story, right? I mean, I'm here in the States, watch the news every day, and, they talk about the Ukraine, right? And it's very clear. The United States stands with Ukraine against Russia because Russia is invading and occupying land that is not theirs. Doesn't this story sound familiar to you? Right? It's crystal clear. Unfortunately, when it comes to Palestine, it's complicated. But also, and this is the other thing, our problem is with the Bible. You know, because the Bible for you is good news, right? Of salvation. For us, it is interpreted as if our land is given to another people and we have to evacuate. So where is the good news for us? Right? And so these are some of the challenges we are facing. But really, the most important challenge we are facing is how can we look our young people in the eyes when we know Sunday is not coming soon and tell them that there is hope. You know, I think young people in this country, they maybe lost their hope in life after death. Our young people back home, somehow they believe that there is life after death. They have no problem in believing that. Their problem is to believe that there is life before death that is worth living. That is our challenge. And so how can we look our young people in the eyes and tell them that there is life, before death, that is worth living? And we don't do that with words. But what we did actually was we felt God was calling us to start a university. And you know, if you live in that context and you hear such a call, you know, you think, God, you are crazy. I mean, in a context like this, you want to start a new university. And what kind of university? A university that focuses on arts and culture. Isn't that like a luxury? Is this really what our people need? But this was exactly the call we heard, to establish a university for art and culture. And why arts and culture? Because, you know, if you live in that part of the world, if you feel all of this heat, art actually could be a therapy. It's one of the most actually powerful therapy tools is art therapy. And that actually next year we are going to start the first master in art therapy in the whole of Palestine, because we feel there is so much need in this area. But imagine we are here in this beautiful sanctuary. Imagine church without music and without all of this art that we see around us. I guess it will be very boring, right? Because the gospel of Jesus Christ has always to interact with the culture of that place. And this is actually how people experience God, is through art, through music. And so for us, it was important also to provide the churches with the next generation of musicians who can really help, you know, develop new tunes. You know, when I took over Christmas Lutheran Church, we were still singing hymns that were written in the UK in the 19th century. You know, British people gave up on these hymns and we were holding on to them, right? And the tunes just did not speak to us. But now if you go to Christmas Lutheran Church, you can see, okay, we kept 2 of those hymns every Sunday, but also 2 new hymns that speak really to our culture. Different instrument, etc. We have now a gallery exhibition at our university with some of our own collection of Christian art that we developed in the last 25 years. And you can see the Last Supper in a Palestinian style, something totally different than Michelangelo or whatever. You know, if you come to Christmas Lutheran Church, you look at the stained glass window and you think Jesus was Scandinavian, you know, with his blue eyes and blonde hair. Our people did not dare to paint Jesus like they are. And I had a group of priests coming to visit us, and they were really angry that we were painting Jesus like a Palestinian. And then they said, we knew that he had blue eyes and blonde hair. I said, where did you hear that? I mean, this is colonial thinking, maybe. I said, you know, who cares if Jesus had blue eyes or brown eyes? Nobody cares. But if you cannot imagine Jesus but with blue eyes, then you are having problem with your Christian identity. This is what we need to talk about identity. And so art really is about identity. And how can we shape the identity of a whole nation even if we are small in number? That's the challenge that is before us, but that's a very important challenge that we would like to participate in. But you know, arts and culture also are very powerful communication tools. You know, if I were to show you now a 5-minute films, that might be much more actually powerful than a lecture of 1 hour. And to train our young people to tell our story through art, through music, through film is amazing. You know, one of our students, he comes from the largest refugee camp in Bethlehem, called the Hesha refugee camp. He wanted to do a film about life in the camp. And he did a great film, 15 minutes. It talks about him trying to record a song at his home in the camp. But you know, homes are very crowded. You cannot have 1 minute where, you know, somebody is shouting there and, you know, the car is whooping and so on. And so he couldn't. And so he had to think of a creative idea. And then he thought, why not actually go through the refugee camp and capture all of these voices and noises and include them in that film. It's a funny film about life in that refugee camp. But that film won the 3rd prize at Cannes Film Festival. And imagine, from the refugee camp to the red carpet. This is exactly how we see our ministry. Just a few weeks ago, another film, 5-minute film, won 2 prizes in France. And it's a funny film about a young man, 2 young people in Palestine. In Arabic, it's called Sirri Mirri, and Sirri Mirri is like a slogan for young people who have nothing to do, so they just, you know, keep wandering around. But Sirri, what he did, he played with the word, and Sirri became Siri. You know Siri? And so these 2 young people in the car, you know, they are talking to each other and say, Siri, tell us the way, take us to the beach. Palestinians cannot go to the beach. Or Siri, take us to Jerusalem. People in Bethlehem cannot go to Jerusalem. You know, you have the wall that you saw. And so it's a very, very interesting film. In 5 minutes, you get the Palestinian story and the life of young people like no one else can tell you it. And so it's amazing to see how these young people are actually in that very difficult situation are able to get new skills, to be empowered, to feel there is life before death. and they can shape their own life. They can do something with it. And actually, they can also resist the Israeli occupation in a very creative way through art, through storytelling. It's very important that our story is told, because our story, unfortunately, is silenced. You heard it from Rick when he wanted to have that in Los Angeles Times or in New York. He was not allowed because our story is silenced all the time. But these young people are finding new ways of telling their story through dance, through theater, through design, but also through culinary art. And it's amazing, we started, 15 years ago with this university with 18 students. Now we have 500 students. We have around 22 degrees that we offer. Some of them are 2-year degrees, some of them are bachelor degrees, and this year we started 2 new master degrees. A master in arts, visual and performing art, and people can actually specialize either in film or in contemporary art or in music. And the other master is in managing cultural organization. And we developed this new master because we did a study about all the church-related organizations in Palestine. We have 296 church-related organizations in Palestine. And when we did the study, we found out that most of these organizations, they lack leadership. There is no leadership that's going to help them reach the next decade. And so we said, if we really want to help the churches and their organizations in Palestine, the best thing is to invest in leadership. And so we actually tailored this master for this group of people. And this will help us really bring new creativity and a new power, a new energy into the life of the Christian organizations in Palestine. But also we teach things like culinary art. Culinary art is important. If you look at the Bible, hospitality is a theme that starts in Genesis and goes all the way right to the revelation of John. Imagine when, the story when Abraham and Sarah were visited by the 3 angels, and that was the hospitality. Hospitality, our slogan is hospitality is our spirituality. And for a city like Bethlehem or Jerusalem, where they live on tourism, 70% of our economy actually depends on tourism. These hotels, these restaurants need chefs. They need people who know not only how to cook, but how to cook, creatively, and how to serve creatively, and how to cook, healthy food. And so we started this culinary art program, and it's one of our most important programs. And we have this is the next program that we are now embarking on. So we will start next month, actually, to build our Hospitality Educational Center. And the Hospitality Educational Center actually has 2 parts. One is an educational kitchen with 8 stations so that 16 students can cook at the same time, as well as a restaurant where our students can actually train. But not only our students can train, but groups can come and enjoy Palestinian hospitality and food. This project actually was supposed to be finished 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we got actually a positive response from USAID that we got a good portion of the funding to build this facility. But then when President Trump was elected, he said there should be no funds going to Palestine. So we lost the funding. Thanks God, just this last week, when I was on the way to the US, we got a message from USAID, ASHA, American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, that we received actually a grant. Oh no, sometimes I'm too quick. A grant to build this facility. It will come on the top of this building that we have, and it's a light structure. It's a glass structure. From there, actually, this is like the highest point in Bethlehem. So if you sit there, you can see the Dead Sea, and you can see the Judean desert, and you can see Jerusalem, and you can see the old town of Bethlehem. It's 360 visibility. I think in Seattle you have this restaurant that rotates, right? Yeah, this will not rotate, but if you have 2 or 3 scotch, it might start to rotate, okay? So you see the building, the building is there. What is needed now is just the light structure that will come on top of it. And so we signed the contract just 2 days ago. We will receive 2/3 of the cost from ASHA, American Schools and Hospitals Abroad. And the challenge now to my colleague Chris is to raise the last third, which is around $400,000 she has to raise during next year. And this brings me to tourism, Rick. We developed a program, actually culinary tourism. When you go anywhere to Italy or whatever, I think food is a very important, besides history and archaeology and so on. Food is maybe one of the most important things. So we developed actually a program for groups to come and look at the land through the lens of food. In fact, we are also, food and theology is a very important aspect. I'm working with a friend of mine on this topic. He's doing a conference at ILEF School of Theology in next year on food. So imagine if groups will come to meet the people, but also to experience the culture, but also to have a cooking course if they want. And we have now this educational kitchen where we can host 20 people and they can be on their stations and cooking at the same time with our chef, whatever they like, maklube or hummus. Maybe you would like to know how to do the best hummus in the world. Okay, come to Bethlehem, you can learn that. But it's really giving our people life and life in abundance. This is why our vision statement says that we might have life and have it abundantly. And the we, that we might have life, have to include Palestinians. Often we feel that we exclude Palestinians, right? The whole world is interested how the Jews can have life and life in abundance because of the Holocaust, and maybe because they look white or so, whatever. But the we in the gospel includes everyone, does not exclude anyone. And so this is what we want to highlight. It's that our people deserve to have life, and to have life before death that is worth living for. And this is why, we started 3 years ago, even in Gaza, a training center for our university. Gaza, is an open-air prison. It's the most, depressed place in the world. People cannot do much there. Everything is polluted. The water, the air, everything. But yet, when I went there 3 years ago and came back, within like 2 weeks, 200 young artists from Gaza added me, and they kept saying, you have to come. We don't have one single center or university in Gaza that teaches art. And, these are the most creative people. And one of our, the chairperson of our university, actually, he likes always to say and to remind us that diamonds are made under pressure. And with all of this pressure that we are really experiencing, God is making all of these diamonds. It's only our role is really to look for those diamonds and to polish them a bit so that they can shine in this world and excel in their life. That is really the mission of al-Kalima University. And imagine within 15 years, we were able from scratch to develop a university, to create a campus, to assemble a team, to develop programs, to get accreditation. This is actually a miracle. So if you think miracles do not happen anymore, surely this is one miracle that God did. If you would have told me 25 years ago when I started that we are going to have a university, I would have laughed like Sarah when she was told she's getting pregnant with 90, right? But every time we felt the vision was too big and really it's more than what we can handle, God was always saying, hold on, you have no idea. We are just starting. And this is what I feel. We are just starting because what Jesus started 2,000 years ago in Palestine has to continue. And I think God is using us just to continue portion of it in this miracle making in Palestine. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, friends, can we all agree that I work with an incredible world changer right here, Mitri? Seriously. Okay, so Bright Stars of Bethlehem, actually, we are the fuel that runs the mission, or helps to run the mission of the university. So I have friends and family that often come to me and say, Chris, how can you ask people for money? Isn't that kind of hard? Isn't that rough? And what I say to them is, I'm not asking people for money in this situation. I've worked in the university space. I've worked with at-risk teens, developing programs. I've worked with alongside of a lot of nonprofits. And this truly is the most world-changing work that I've ever been a part of. So I want to say thank you to those of you that I know that support Bright Stars of Bethlehem already. Because the cool thing is, not only do I work with a world changer, but I am a world changer, and it's because of my alignment with this incredible mission. And so those of you that support us, you are also world changers. And so it's not so hard for me to ask for money for this mission, because I'm not asking for money, I'm inviting you to be world changers with us. So I'm super excited to actually share with you stories about world change. Would you like to hear about some of the students and see some of the pictures of the students? Okay, before I do that, I would like a show of hands for who has actually visited Bethlehem and Palestine. Anybody? Okay, huge number of people in the audience, a lot. All right, so can you imagine my challenge when I first became the executive director? And that was, my first day was on April 1st of 2020. Did that day ring a bell to anybody? That was basically the first day of the pandemic, was my first day of work. And I thought to myself, okay, so to try to get people excited about a mission of a nonprofit, you really have to get people to hear the narrative storytelling. You have to get them to understand how is this changing the world? So I thought, well, how am I gonna ever tell stories when I've never been there? Not only that, I grew up Catholic. I then converted to Protestantism. I got kooky and went to a Lutheran church. Then I was involved with an evangelical church, and I was, I really didn't know anything about what was going on in Palestine, and I did believe a lot of the myths that weren't true that Rick shared with us. And I thought, I don't know anything about this mission. I don't know how I'm going to do this job, especially since I've never been there. But what I did was I started developing relationships with the students and also with ambassadors all over the country who had been there, like many of you. Because I bet all of you have stories. Raise your hand if you have a story from going to Bethlehem, going to Palestine. Yeah, I think you've got stories. So let's jump into this. First of all, I'd like to talk about what is the mission of Bright Stars of Bethlehem. And the mission, let me use my little thingy. Well, first of all, our vision is for all people of Palestine to have life in abundance. I think that we all know that echoes the Bible as well. Our mission is to raise awareness and support for al-Kalima University, the first and only University of Arts and Culture in all of Palestine. And the reason we say all of Palestine is because we have a satellite program in Gaza as well. So when I first started my job, one of the things I did was I Zoom called some students in Palestine, one of which was in Gaza, and developed these incredible relationships and got to know their families, their stories. So let's talk about some of these kids. All right, I want to tell you, I'm so excited to tell you that I actually did finally get to Palestine in March of this year. And that was a long time in coming. And when I got there, I had friends, people that I loved. And Carla is one of those students. Carla is a graphic design student. And when I interviewed her early on, I got to know that when she was 11 months old, her parents lived in Beit Jala. And their home was destroyed by a rocket. And her father's best friend tried to save her father, and he was killed. And they had to start over, and they had to move to Bethlehem. Her dad ended up working in food service at a university. And then during the pandemic, he didn't have money for tuition for her because he was not working. So I'm really excited to tell you that Carla was the first recipient of the Women of Vision Award, which is an endowed scholarship for female students at al-Kalima. And when I went to visit her, she said, "Chris, I want to take you to a coffee shop." And she came and picked me up. And she brought me to a coffee shop, but then she said, "I've got a surprise." She took me to her aunt's shop and then took me in the back and said, "I've got my own little business now," and she was doing nails. And that was also to augment her education, to help her to pay for her tuition. Now, her story really, in her effervescence, really just kind of highlights the entrepreneurial spirit, the perseverance, the samud that Rick was talking about. So Carla is one student that I absolutely love, among many, and this is Anas. He is an incredible singer and was doing a vocal major. And last spring, during some of the violence, he was just going to the Al-Aqsa Mosque to worship. And he was detained. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just trying to worship. And do you see the smile on his face? That's a sign of creative resistance. That's what the young people are doing now, because they have a sense of wanting to resist, but doing it in creative ways. He ended up coming back to DAK, and now he's doing a second degree in music. And I got to meet him too. Okay, this is one of my favorite stories. So when I went through the university, I love film. My daughter is a filmmaker. And I really believe in the power of storytelling through film. And these two, so I said, "Mitchell, I want to go into the film editing bay." And he took me in, and these two young ladies were kind of a surprise. He didn't expect them to be in there. But one of the cool things, too, is that DAK, they allow, these two young ladies have graduated, but they can use the equipment even though they've already graduated. And I said, what are you ladies doing? I saw there was like a drawing up on the editing screen. And Mitri interpreted what they were saying. They were very excited, and they were like, the story was there is a Israeli filmmaker, and he was set out to do a documentary about the Palestinian prisoners in the Israeli prisons. And when the Palestinian people in the film world found out about this, they were like, man, are you gonna, they were worried. They're like, I don't think he's gonna tell our narrative. Well, when the film was done, he did not tell the Palestinian narrative. So these two brave young women decided to interview one of their classmates who's currently a student. He actually just graduated from DAK. He was in prison for 7 years, and he's an artist. So they decided to deconstruct that Israeli film and reconstruct it with the Israeli narrative using clips from the student they know, but also the one in the yellow young lady. She held up her YouTube video, and she showed me how she was being dragged across the ground by an Israeli soldier, and it took her to be detained, and then she somehow got a hold of a video of her, from her attorney, of her being interrogated. He was pounding his fist, and she was cowering and crying. So they were going to integrate that into there as well. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And I said, how on earth did you ever get permission to do this to this other guy's film? And then they got really animated. They're like, we don't need permission. That's our narrative. And I said, that right there is an example of creative resistance. And that is an example of this special place at DAK where this education, where this critical thinking is happening, where this freedom is happening, and it's something like I've never seen here in the United States. Okay, this is Ismail, and he's the one who lives in Gaza that I've been talking to. We became friends. We commissioned him to do this painting on the left, and the theme was "Be the Key, Unlock Hope for the Next Generation of Creative Leaders in Palestine." And his early drawings were very dark and pencil and like children grabbing onto their mothers, because he's been through 3 or 4 wars in Gaza. And last spring, when things were going on with the bombings, he would call me and FaceTime me and show me the curtains rattling, and I could listen to the bombs happening. I'm happy to tell you that about 2 months ago, Ismail, his dream was to go and be an artist in Europe. And his brother worked for a nonprofit. They saw his art, and they invited him out from Stockholm, Sweden. So he's now living in Stockholm, and his dream is coming alive. Okay, this is a picture of the new center that's happening. And here's the graduates. This really captures the essence of the hope unlocked, of the hope. Our slogan at Bright Stars is "Hope is what we do." So this right here is what we're talking about with changing the world. I can attest to the fact, having gone to the university, that there is world-changing stuff going on there, and I invite you all to be a part of that. There are many ways that you can help, and one is if you'd like to be an ambassador. There's volunteerism that folks help us with events and spread the word, but also a one-time gift, monthly gift, a bequest, and there's going to be, Rick's going to talk about other ways. We've got actual ways you can give today if you'd like. But again, I want to thank everyone who has supported us. Thank you for coming tonight, and I invite you to be a part of the world-changing work with us. God bless you all. Thank you.